Hello everybody, this is the Adaptive Tech Guy, and today I'm here with Dax. She will introduce herself, and she's going to ask me questions about my challenges with learning disabilities.
Hi, I'm Dax Abrams. I just have a couple of questions for you.
Okay, well, shoot away.
So, what kind of disabilities do you have and how do they affect you?
I have ADHD combo type, which is hyperactivity and hyper distraction. So when it comes to thinking, it's very difficult because at any given moment inside my head, imagine yourself in a room with 100 TVs.
Yeah.
And the TVs are all switching channels over and over again. But you're trying to hold a conversation in that room with somebody, or trying to do work, or trying to do something. It's very distracting and very difficult. And sometimes those channels influence the way you behave. And somebody else even said it better with their ADHD. It's like pop-up. Sometimes they hit a pop-up ad, and the ad causes the computer to change the function, so they're doing something they didn't intend to say or do because of their ADHD. And it affects me that way. Sometimes I say the wrong thing. Sometimes when I'm typing, I type a word backwards. Sometimes I lose place in a conversation with someone. Or if I can't focus, I have to have background noises to help me focus. And the second disability I have is dyscalculia. And dyscalculia is dyslexia for math. I have difficulty recognizing numerical characters. So I always did poorly in math. As a result of that, when I wanted to go for a computer science degree, I had to change it to psychology. And dyscalculia affects me where I invert the numbers or sometimes confuse them for letters. And that's how my disability affects me currently.
Sounds like a challenge, but you seem to be handling it well.
Yes.
So, how old were you when you were first diagnosed with a disability?
My parents had me tested between the ages of 6 and 8. When I was 8 years old, they were notified that I had ADHD, and that was it. That's the only thing they were notified of. Dyscalculia I didn't discover I had until college.
Wow.
It was when I was in pre-cal and I kept confusing logarithmic functions and functions of f. Being unable to do those and confusing the numbers, because it was using numbers and letters, showed me that I had dyscalculia, which is also why I had difficulty remembering numbers. And when I was diagnosed, they never notified me. I didn't find out I had ADHD until I was 16 years old during an IEP meeting in high school.
Wow.
So I was in the special ed program, and I thought it was because of my behavior problems. However, it wasn't just because of my behavior problems. I had a high intelligence when it came to reading and writing, but a low intelligence when it came to math. I also had difficulty understanding the inner concepts of books and other things. So if I was reading a book, I could read the book perfectly, but I couldn't tell you what was going on inside the book's story. I couldn't tell you who the protagonist or antagonist is, who's the main character, or any of that. And that was part of my disability.
The books sort of got jumbled together.
Yeah, the books, I just couldn't understand the inner context. But when I reached college, I took a course, American History, with Professor D'Alessandro, and she showed that the same way that I analyze movies is the same way that I can analyze books. Because films are just conversions of books to plays to movies. Thinking in that way, in 2006, I developed the ability to understand anything I'm reading, no matter how complex, even if it's something I'm not familiar with.
That's awesome. So, what sorts of personal and academic problems did your disabilities cause?
Well, when I was a child, it was mostly behavior problems and social problems. Because of my ADHD, I was slow in developing socially, so I didn't know how to behave in a peer environment or in an academic environment. Because of my disability, I was the sort of student that you had to tell them what their role was, what they're supposed to do. If you didn't do that, my ADHD would take over, and I would become a little monster.
Hmm. As you grew up with your disabilities, how did they change based on your age?
Well, when I was a child, it was mostly behavioral and learning my role, and really learning the inner context of academics. In high school, where it becomes of a more peer-heavy environment, it affected me, and I didn't know how to socialize with others. As well as in high school, I was bullied and picked on, so I had to also turn off my emotions, which caused which affected me greatly. I didn't have any emotions. I was sort of like a robot. I used logic to explain everything to myself, because I didn't have emotions. Because I was bullied in high school, and if I showed any emotion, they would victimize me for it.
So you sort of blocked the emotions out.
Yes, and my disability affected me because without those emotions, I could not socialize properly, which also made it difficult for me to ask girls out or behave that's reflective of my age. I could be 17 years old, but still enjoy things that a 13 or 14-year-old would. So it also caused a slight deficiency in my maturity level in high school. Then in college, once I met people that were similar to me in the disabilities program, Project Mentor, I started meeting others that had the same issues. And with that, I realized that I'm not the only one, and I started to do things more proactive, read books on how to develop social skills, go on the internet and read facts on different websites. Even before there was a wiki, there was hotbot.com, and that would give you all these different web pages where you can get information.
Awesome. What was your family's reactions and treatment of your disability?
They didn't know how to discipline me.
So they would kind of just let you be.
No. They would, my father took the rod aspect. You know, you spare the rod, you spoil the child.
Oh, yeah.
So whenever I misbehaved, I knew that belt was coming and I'd run. I mean, it's upsetting, but he didn't know.
He didn't know a better method.
He didn't know about my disability. He was uneducated, so I don't blame him for that. He did the best he could uneducated about disabilities.
Okay, so he kind of just thought you were just misbehaving because you were a bad kid, but in reality, your disabilities were causing this.
That's right. And also, because of my disabilities, they felt that I had a lower than average intelligence. Which is to the contrary, case. Yeah, I was smarter than they actually thought. But, so they limited my socializing with my own peers. So I wasn't able to go out to friends' houses like I wanted to, or parties, or any of these things. They essentially kept me home all the time, in a gilded cage. I had my Super Nintendo, I had my PlayStation, I had my PlayStation 2. But, to me, it wasn't worth it. Because I wanted to go out and socialize. It wasn't until college, 21, 22, 23 years old, when I started going out and making friends, that I started to socially grow. So you could say that my disability affected me in the 90s by freezing. So I grew up in the 80s, stagnated in the 90s, and grew up again in 2000. And another thing about my disability is I need background noise. And my father didn't understand that. So he would get very upset whenever I wanted to watch TV and do my homework at the same time, not realizing that even if I'm not watching the show on TV, as long as the TV's on, I can do my work fine. He didn't know that. So he would get very upset whenever I was watching TV and doing homework. So I had to do it in a quiet environment, which was very difficult because in a quiet environment where I have to sit still, I procrastinate and I can't focus. And they did try Ritalin, didn't work. I didn't like taking medications, but when I was 28, 29 years old, and my disability started to affect me more, I didn't know why. I decided to start taking medications for my disability, and now it turns 100 TVs to just 20. But to answer the question, really, my family just didn't know. They were just uneducated about my disability, so they did the best they could, which caused a few problems here and there.
When did you see your disability as a strength rather than a weakness, and did anyone or any place help you see it as a strength?
I didn't start to see my disability as a strength until I started meeting other students with disabilities at my university, NJCU. When I went to their disabilities program and started meeting other students there, seeing they had the same problem as I did, when I participated in events where I was on a panel where students got to ask me questions and talk about my college or collegiate experience, that's when I started to see it as a strength. When I met Director Aiken of the program, she taught me that my disability is not what defines me. I ultimately define myself. I am not my disability. I am not a label. And so did a Miss Jackson too. Both of them showed me that. And when that started to happen, I pretty much began changing my life. And believe it or not, I used to weigh 370 pounds.
Wow.
But because of the belief from Director Aiken and because of that program, I took the initiative. I started becoming more serious with my academics, and I started to learn my disability. I started to see how I can use it as an advantage. Because of my ADHD, my brain never shuts down. As a result of that, I have a photographic memory, so I can remember almost everything perfectly. Most people can't remember what they did. I can remember what I did from when I woke up, when I went to bed. Yesterday, the day before yesterday.
That's great.
And as it goes backwards, it gets a little cloudier, but I could still ballpark exactly what I was doing. And I could repeat whole conversations, and that was a strength. Another thing I realized is, when I take my ADHD medication, or when I type with the computer, I have extra processing power in my brain. I was taught in school to always write, but in college, you could use a laptop. So I started using a laptop, and when that happened, I learned that it would free all these different processes that I would have to concentrate with. Because as I was writing, I'd have to make sure that it's on the line, that it's legible, that the notes make sense, that it's in sync with what the professor wants. But when I'm typing, all I have to do is listen to the professor, type what they write on the board, type what they say, and I'm able to put it into context with the material and take better notes than I ever could. And by learning that aspect of my disabilities, my grade point average improved and my performance in class improved. Another thing I learned about myself was I was an audiovisual learner. So whenever I needed any sort of assistance, I would look at examples, and now with the power of YouTube, I could do pretty much anything I want. All I have to do is YouTube a how-to video, and I could do it. Recently, I repaired a laptop, a 2009 MacBook. Never did it before. The hard drive was dead and it needed to be replaced. I watched one video. I knew how to replace it, knew how to update the RAM, reset the password, reinstall everything, and I fixed it perfectly. And it was the first time I ever fixed a Mac.
Wow.
And that was all because my disability is audiovisual. Another thing is, it allows me to see things differently. Most people see something and they see it as a singular object. But I could see it more than one object. Uh, One example is my cousin had a camera. She had a Sony Memory Stick Pro Duo, but she didn't have the reader for her computer. Her son had a PSP. So what I did was I took his PSP, connected it to the computer, took the pictures from the PSP into the computer. Nobody would have ever thought to use a PSP as a memory card reader. And I apply this to my everyday life when it comes to tablets and technology as well.
That's great. I was wondering, have you ever faced any discrimination because of your disabilities?
In high school, there was an unwritten rule: as long as you were part of the special ed department, you could be bullied, picked on, no consequences.
That's terrible.
I know. And then, after I graduated high school, I didn't have to deal with any kind of discrimination other than people thought I wasn't as smart as I actually am. You know, that you have ADHD, so you're not that smart.
Which is a silly assumption.
Yes, and I proved to many that I was very intelligent and very mature and very capable. But then in 2010, situations occurred where now they all think that I'm some unstable individual, when in reality I'm not. They think I'm incapable of functioning in their office. They think I'm incapable of functioning at the school. So currently, at my university, I'm banned under false pretenses, and I'm in the midst of trying to resolve that so I can continue my education.
Why are you banned?
Gossip and hearsay. And that is part of discrimination.
Well, I definitely hope that what's right comes through for you, because that's not right to be discriminated against for a disability. But once you did see the strength, aside from your technological savvies, how else, what positive effects were brought upon you?
About my disabilities?
Once you started to see it as a strength.
Once I started to see it as a strength, it was excelling in school.
Yeah.
Not only excelling in school, but bringing it into conversations with people, developing programs, writing documentation, tutoring methodology, assessment capabilities, education-wise, being able to decipher the professor's thought processes. I could sit in a classroom and know exactly what a professor is thinking. Just by the way they say. And the way they introduce themselves, I could tell their personality archetype almost immediately, so I know how to do the work in their course.
And excel in that course
Yes.
as well. Well, since you have an interest in technology, what technology and accommodations did you use, and what is adaptive technology to you?
Well, the accommodations that I use, accommodations are given to you if you have a learning disability, and they could be a note taker, they could be a distraction-free environment when you're taking a test, utilization of a laptop in class or a tablet in class if you have dyslexia, audiobooks that you could order, a use of a calculator. For me to pass my math courses, they allowed me to use index cards with example formulas, and I was able to pass all my math courses just by using those index cards for quadratic functions and things of that sort. And those are basically accommodations, giving you a accommodation to help assist you obtain an equal opportunity environment in school. And like I said, it could be note-taking, testing types, and utilization of adaptive technology. One thing was, I've always used adaptive technology, but I didn't know it was adaptive technology. It wasn't until 2008 when my disabilities program had this this introduction to disability or adaptive technology, where they showed the program WIN and other types of adaptive technology, the Dana and the Pulse Pen. And this was all adaptive technology that I heard about but never really went into. Then in 2008, or after 2008, 2009, the director of the Disabilities Department started to ask me to look at adaptive technology more. And to help her out
Mhm.
and volunteer. So I did. And since 2000, from 2009 and to 2011 spring, I was in charge of all adaptive technology, and I taught that office how to use. They had all this adaptive technology, they didn't even know how to use it.
Oh, wow.
And even now, I have this video is going to be on Adaptive Tech Guy channel on YouTube, and that channel is all about adaptive technology, using the iPad, using the Samsung phones or Android tablets. What's best for a person with a disability? I learned how to change formats and create all kinds of software formats for students with disabilities, dyslexia. I had a student with cerebral palsy, trapped in a wheelchair. So what I did was I would bring my tablet computer, I would connect it to a monitor or to a projector that they had at the school, because he was partially blinded too, and I would project it on a screen, and while writing on a virtual notebook piece of paper and having the test there as a PDF, while there we could work together either by the monitor or projection on the screen for him to do the exam. And that's adaptive technology. I adapted my tablet to use a external monitor or a projector to help him better. I had another student who was visually impaired, and being his note taker, I had to set up his notes a specific way so his software called Cruisewell could read it back to him, because he couldn't read it himself. And with an iPad, I learned about all the different apps for students with disabilities, and the iPad is considered a great adaptive technology tool. Adaptive technology is just technology that you adapt to help you either in a living situation or in an academic environment.
Well, that's really awesome that you had a disability, you recognized it, and you made the most of it, and now not only are you helping yourself, but you're helping others.
Yes.
It's been a pleasure to interview you.
Oh, thank you, Dax. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Alright, this is Adaptive Tech Guy and Dax, and that was my interview of my disabilities. I hope you guys enjoyed, and stay tuned to my channel. Want to say goodbye?
Goodbye.